Thanks for joining us today for Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Mick Haley, Bob Bertucci, and Brian Gimmillero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. Our weekly news show has leaders in our sport provide their perspective on the questions that are asked, along with the discussion on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us. Our newsflash inbox. The Division I Council voted to recommend the NCAA Division I Board of Directors to adopt an interim policy that would suspend amateurism rules related to name, image, and likeness. That means college athletes can engage in NIL activities that are consistent with the law of the state where the school is located. Colleges and universities are responsible for determining whether those activities are consistent with that state law. To stay up on these decisions for NIL, follow knightcommission.org or ncaa.org. ESPN.com reported that NIL student athletes could earn $5,000 per year just by having 10,000 followers. The VNL standings for the men: Brazil first, Poland, France, Slovenia, Serbia, and USA. And for the women, USA winning the gold, then Brazil, Turkey, Japan, and China. The IOC announced Tokyo 2020 organizing committee scheduled for volleyball indoor men's begins Saturday, July 24th, and gold medal matches Saturday, August 7th, and indoor women's beginning Sunday, July 25th, and gold medal matches on Sunday, August 8th. Beach volleyball begins July 24th with gold medal matches on August 6th and 7th, with the opening ceremonies Friday, July 23rd, and closing ceremonies Sunday, August 8th. Be sure to check out www.fanproject.co for updates, and their most recent statement is, the pipeline of talent for women's professional sports is growing at 6 times the rate of men's pipeline. Want to make a difference? Please remember to renew your AVCA membership. This one organization that represents all coaches at all levels when lobbying for the changes that are needed in our sport. You can make a difference by registering at avca.org. For the next few weeks, we will be bringing you MasterCoaches Re-Mix Flashbacks from previous shows. So jump on live at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time every Wednesday, or anytime on our Volleyball Master Coaches Facebook page. Today, our guests are from 2 programs that have led the way on how the NIL could and would affect not only their program, but also volleyball. We then jump into the lives of 3 AVCA presidents who will be bringing you great insight into what opportunities and challenges they have had and experienced as AVCA leaders. And finally, a discussion on a book that is heading to the bestseller list for all volleyball coaches. Enjoy our Series 3 of our Master Coaches Re-Mix Flashbacks. Did you know that Brian Gimmillero has an undergraduate degree and graduate degree in economics and winning 3 NCAA championships at Long Beach State? Bob Bertucci, undergraduate degree is in health physical education and his graduate degree in business administration, and with an appearance in the Final Four at Rutgers. And Mick Haley's undergraduate and graduate degree is in education with 3 NCAA championships and 1 AIAW championship at USC and Texas. All will be asking our guests how the NIL, name, image, and likeness, will affect volleyball, and what information should coaches become familiar with before final approval by not only the NCAA, but also Congress, or maybe I should say Congress, then the NCAA. All right, first, let's head over to Austin, Texas, where Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce our guest today. Mick?
Well, did you know Ruth Nelson does not have a degree in economics, as I reported last week, but she does have degrees in health, physical education, and psychology. And she went to 2 AIAW finals with her team in Houston. She is now the developer and owner of BYOP, which Bring Your Own Parent Youth Training Program, and Go Kids Youth Certification Programs. Correction noted. All right, today we want to welcome John Cook, head coach at Nebraska, and Joe Sagula, head coach at the University of North Carolina, to the show. And our topic is, as Ruth said, NIL, name, image, and likeness. And this is presently being referred to, as I said, NIL, and there is pending legislation, not only in the NC2A, but in Congress and in some states and in some cases in other courts. So this is a pretty interesting program to have today. And coaches, what can you tell us about your institutions and how you're going to adjust to the pending changes in amateur athletics? John, I'm going to let you go first because you've been pretty vocal on this subject. So why don't you give us a rundown of what's happening in Nebraska?
Well, Nebraska has entered into an agreement, like many of the big programs and schools are doing, with different companies. And we actually have Open Doors, which actually started this whole idea of athletes using their name, image, and likeness to make money and promote themselves. So they're based here in Lincoln. The owner is a former football player here. He started this. I think they told me they have 26,000 professional athletes that they work with. And so they've met with our team and all the teams here and kind of started laying it out how this will work. But essentially what will happen is we'll take a water break at practice, and Lexi's son can go over and check her phone and see how much money she can make by clicking approve, because she's promoting, some car dealership or Lululemon. So that's what's coming down, and we've kidded about, we might take practice breaks, water breaks, and then we have a check your phone break to see, what deals you got going right now. But it's, to me, it's nuts. So, but that's where it's going. And they project out, for example, somebody, and it's all based on how many followers you have and what your brand is. And they project this out compared to other athletes. The amount of money that they could potentially make is ridiculous. I mean, I'm talking $40,000 to $100,000. And, that's their projections. So here we go.
You're doing pretty good. We need to maybe get you on Laugh-In or something here pretty soon. You've got it going, and I like that, John. That's pretty good. Joe, your athletic director is Bubba Cunningham, and he's seemingly taking a little bit different approach, at least if I read this right, but maybe not. Tell us what you got going with the North Carolina volleyball and what your AD's got going.
Yeah, in our conversations with our people here at Bubba and at North Carolina, right now we know it's coming. We've taken a much slower approach. I think Bubba has bought into the concept now, realize it's coming. I think philosophically he has a different perspective on it, on what it might do. But he knows also North Carolina, like a lot of schools, have a national brand, and we have to get behind it. So I think the biggest thing, our approach is a lot slower to what John is talking about at Nebraska. I think we're in a kind of a wait and see situation and what's happening. I'm getting information here right now, just today, on the literature and what's coming down and what we can and can't do. I think right now we're in an educational perspective. And allow them to do things like normal students, and basically allow them to be able to have side businesses if they have. I have a student athlete who, before she came here, she had a photography business. So now I think now she'll be free to promote that business a little bit more. Just some regular things. I think now there's the other realm of that. And as John was kind of kidding about, checking at water breaks, my question and my concern will be down the road, which maybe people aren't thinking about, and you have someone who's a sponsored athlete, and for some reason, you don't play that athlete. Am I going to get a phone call from that sponsor say, hey, why aren't you playing my person? We've got $50,000 invested in that person. So we thought the questions from parents were a problem. Are we opening up another Pandora's box with this? So who knows? There's a lot we don't know about this, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens coming up.
Well, if they get to be like other students, does that mean they don't have to go to class anymore?
Let's know. Let's hope not.
Well, if you start adding up the hours on this, maybe there's got to be an hour limitation on how much time you can put in to promote yourself, because you're going to try to play volleyball, you're going to try to study,
Sure.
you're going to try to do all of that stuff. It looks like a disaster waiting to happen to me. But Bob, you want to follow up here?
Well, yeah, that's exactly the question I had, Mick, and both Joe and John had touched on it a little bit, so I'd like them to expand on it. Considering the amount of time the student athlete is has on their plate right now with just academics and athletics, how do you perceive your players managing their time when now they're all of a sudden they're going to start promoting their name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, that's, in the classes I've been through with some of them, they actually teach them how to promote their brand better. So they grade them on their Instagram, they grade them on their Twitter account, whatever else there is, they grade them, and then they show them how you can be better and how you can promote yourself better by what you post on Instagram or those other social media avenues. So they're going to educate them and do that. I think what I'm most worried about is, okay, we've got somebody up here making all this money. We've got these freshmen down here just trying to figure things out, and they're going to be thinking, well, why can't I make money? So you're going to have this great divide on your team of who's making money and not. At least with the scholarships now, everybody gets the same. Doesn't matter whether you're a starter or non-starter. So that's going to create issues. And then how much time they're going to be spending worrying about this or going around trying to make deals. And I'm old school, and I worry about where college athletics is going. Also, I follow what Bubba has been saying, and I think he's got it great. I mean, it's like, do we really want to do this? And he's had some reservations, but our athletic director is like, great, how much can we do? How much can we make? How much can these guys take advantage of this? So I don't know, but I think the other thing, I wouldn't be surprised. I know the NCAA is fighting this, and I think there's something that has been sent to the Supreme Court that could potentially, put a wrench in all this. But you've got all these states that have already passed legislation that, let's let it happen. So it's a big worry, and it's going to be really interesting how you develop great teams, and everybody feels good a part of that team.
Well, John, you kind of joked about taking water breaks and kids running over to their phone. But I mean, that could be the reality. I mean,
oh, totally. Yeah.
And how are you going to manage your time just within your own practice? Never mind outside of your practice, when maybe they're going to be more focused on making their $100,000 from being an influencer on the internet than studying. Joe, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, as John pointed out, I'm really concerned about, you would say, the locker room. With the team dynamics, what's going to happen, with, as John pointed out, somebody who you may have one player. First of all, I don't think it's going to happen across the board. There are 16 people on a team. I don't think there are 16 kids dealing at this at the same level. I think we're going to be lucky if there's one or two, but so I think you're going to have to manage that kid and help them the best you can with time management, the way we normally do with anything else they take on, whether it be an internship or something like that. I think that but I'm concerned about the dynamics amongst the team where there's some jealousies, I think, as we alluded to, and the talk within the locker room before practice, after practice, who's doing what. We're going to have to just keep a really close tab on what's going on to really get to know what's going on and talking to players even more. So that the conversations are going to be more than just how was your day. It might be how is your business. Thinking about what all of you said, earlier, those who have, all you coaches have a degree in econ and business, maybe that's the prerequisite to being a coach now, but I don't. So this is a whole different world for us. I think we have to just continue to educate them. I was hearing a story about there's an athlete at UCLA, a gymnast, who has the largest social media following in the country. That's one person, so I think if it's one person or two people on a team, I think it's manageable, Bob. I think it can happen. But I think when you get to the point where you have 6, 8, 10 people, that's going to be open up a whole new situation. But the team dynamics will be affected without question.
It's interesting. Both of you guys mentioned the team dynamics. We've been talking about this subject now for a few hours amongst ourselves, and not once do we even think about the team dynamics as being an issue. But that really is a whole nother can of worms.
Bob, can I interrupt just a second? Yeah. Ruth gave us some information before this program started. She looked online and found that Nebraska has a following of 101,000 people in volleyball. And Lexi's son has a following of 62,000.
And football is 190,000.
Yeah. And then she looked over in the ACC and saw Clemson volleyball with 144,000 following.
No, 42,500 for volleyball and 616,000 for football.
Okay. So the numbers are phenomenal out there, you guys. So yeah. I don't know, Brian, how do you react to that?
I just didn't want Bob to tell us how bad of coaches we were, not even thinking about the locker room. So I'm still thinking about that one right now. After 2 hours and we never thought about that. Bob, don't tell them that, okay?
Bob's got a second question, I know.
We'll get even with Bob.
Yeah. Here, Bob, you got your second question.
Go ahead, Bob. Are you still up?
Well, the other thing, and help me figure this out. I understand there being a big difference between, John, what Nebraska's approach is going to be to this as compared to Joe's at North Carolina. And it seems to me that, the Nebraska approach would be a huge recruiting advantage if kids could come in with, a following of 40,000, people, and they know if they go to Nebraska, they're going to be able to make X amount of dollars. Where my understanding, Joe, at North Carolina, your athletic director is talking about it being all kind of centralized through the athletic department and kind of controlled that way and distributed. So maybe they don't make as much money.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how it's going to be controlled or distributed right now. But you going back to your question about the recruiting advantage, schools have a recruiting advantage no matter what you are. I don't think this is going to be significant. I mean, if you're in a Power 5 conference, those schools have some advantages. If you're in a city, in a college town, I mean, you have, when I look at the pros and cons, if you're in a big city like Los Angeles and you're competing for dollars for someone, how are you going to compete with someone if you're going to UCLA, USC, Loyola, whatever it might be, for a local merchant to sponsor you versus if you're in a small college town where you're the main draw? I think that's where I think things are going to happen. But as far as, how it's going to be controlled, centrally located, I think at UNC, I think, again, with the national brand, I think the primary focus is going to be probably basketball and football, as it should. And then it's going to come down to some key athletes in each sport, whether it be in a volleyball player, soccer players, women's soccer, lacrosse players, whatever it might be. I think there are more questions than answers right now, Bob, about that, how we're going to all control that.
John, what do you think about the potential recruiting advantages using your approach at Nebraska?
I think the schools that are really behind this are going to use it. We've already used it. Now the difference is, we're sending that to a 16-year-old, or which now we sent this out before the new rules came in, potentially what they could make, and what, we just used our players' profiles right now, what potentially they could make, and sent that to recruits. And, I don't know what a 9th, 10th grader thinks of that, but, at some point they're going to realize, if I go to this school or go to that school, where can I make the most money?
First, let's head over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce today's special guest.
Well, I can do that pretty good, Ruth, but I need to also introduce you a little bit, because Ruth Nelson is a former USA national team player and assistant coach, and has coached 3 Division I schools to over 600 wins. So Ruth, thank you for that nice lead into the show today. And we have 2 exceptionally good coaches, top collegiate coaches in the country, joining us today, in Mark Rosen at the University of Michigan and Keegan Cook from the University of Washington. Welcome, you guys. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Vic. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is kind of exciting for me, because both of you have decided to take some of your valuable time and give back to volleyball in the collegiate community as president. And I don't know if you're aware of people are aware out there, but Ruth has put up a picture that I took off my wall, one that I valued greatly when the American Volleyball Coaches Association first started. The founders, Terry Liskevich and Andy Banikowski, got together and thought we really needed a coaches association. And I was working in Texas, which they thought was on the East Coast, but it's really in the Southwest. And they wanted to bring the country together. So they asked me if I'd consider being the first president. So honestly, I have a little background as to what you guys have been into and what you're getting into, Keegan. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show. And before we start talking about why you're getting into that, though, can you give us a little bit of a rundown on this fall? It had to be one of the strangest experiences either of you have ever had. And can you tell us if you actually got anything accomplished, since neither of your conferences played? It'd be kind of interesting to hear that. Mark, why don't you go first?
Yeah, it was very unprecedented just how this whole fall unfolded, and it started out where we're planning to have a season. We're starting practice with the season in mind, but it never felt like we were going to have a season. Like, it just didn't feel like it was going to come together. And then when they pulled the plug on the season about a week into it, everything shifted. And, we actually were able to get some stuff done. We were able to get quite a bit of 20-hour sessions in where we did a lot of practice. It was obviously very different because we didn't have competitions to prepare for. And it was very inconsistent. 1 week we would have full numbers, the next week we would have limited numbers, or we could do them in small groups because of state ordinances. Our state ordinances were changing in terms of what we could do and couldn't do in larger small groups. So it was a little inconsistent that way, but I tell you, I give our players tremendous credit. They were very resilient. They just kind of went with the flow. Whatever we were able to do, they did. And I was just really proud of them and how they approached it. But I felt like we got a lot better, and we had 1 week left, and then a governor made another change in policy, and we had to stop things a little bit early. But when I talked to some of our counterparts, especially on the West Coast, I think we actually got pretty lucky and got a lot done compared to what some people were able to. So I'm going to feel blessed with what we got. I felt like we got to develop a little bit of leadership, develop a little bit of system within what we're going to do. And hopefully if we have a season in January, we're going to be a little more prepared than we would be otherwise. So again, I felt like we got some stuff done.
Yeah, and Keegan, state of Washington really got hammered. So did you get anything accomplished this fall?
Isn't that the question we always ask ourselves? It's a funny story. I had a chance to watch Michigan's practice. It accidentally got posted to our video service at one point, and I called Mark and said, "Team looks great. I'm not playing you this year." So that was a fun moment. His team looks great. we had a few more restrictions than most across the country. The biggest one being that we were not permitted to play along the net. That activity of blocking and hitting at each other was deemed a high risk activity. And so you have to have stricter testing protocols in order to be allowed to do that. So we didn't block each other for an entire fall period. So it felt like the never ending serve pass side out against three poor defenders back there. But, constraint can make you better. As you know, it forced us to spend our time in serve receive where we knew we needed to spend it. And coaches like me can easily get distracted by hitting and blocking. And so it forced us to be in that space. I don't think I've spent as much time as I have this fall on the values of our program, redefining them, making sure that they're understood by staff and students. And so we spent a significant amount of time doing some of that work that can also fall by the wayside when you're playing matches and you're in the heat of the moment. So we did what we could. We practiced flexibility in the highest regard. And I think eventually we'll look back on this time and be thankful for the work that we did.
Very good. Bob Bertucci had an interesting question. Bob, what did you want to throw at these guys?
Well, I think Ruth kind of alluded to it in her opening comments. And Keegan, maybe I'll start with you, all right? And then Mark could give us a little bit more wisdom to this question, all right? First is, what does the AVCA mean to you, all right? And, knowing how much time, it takes, for a coach to get everything done that they need to get done, going into a season and in a season, how do you feel like you could possibly, give up the time needed to be president of the association of the AVCA? So it's kind of a two-part question, and then we'll let Mark handle it after you give it a shot.
Yeah, the strength of your question creates some doubt. You're scaring me a little bit. The AVCA to me just represents the never-ending learning process. It represents a commitment to continuing my own education, in the sport. That's one part. The other part would be a commitment to be part of something bigger than yourself. And those two things are two things, Bob, that I ask my athletes to do always. Hey, be part of something bigger than yourself. And hey, you better always be learning. And I had a little bit of a moment where I looked at myself and said, are you living those values? Are you practicing what you preach to these athletes on a daily basis? And so when the idea of potentially joining the AVCA and kind of a service role came up, it felt like an opportunity for me to walk the walk a little bit, to commit to continue my own education and to commit to being part of something bigger than yourself. There's a big trend right now, I think you guys can feel it, of distrust or lack of popularity of large organizations, whether that's USA Volleyball or the NCAA, and I don't like that. It bothers me quite a bit. What makes our sport special are when we come together in large groups and give it meaning. And so it's a little bit of a going against that trend that I see of individualism, in our country and within our sport, trying to work against that. So a little convoluted there at the end, as coaches can often get, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. So.
How about, I know you haven't done this yet, all right? What do you think about the time commitment? How are you going to be able to balance all that has to be done to help run an association and still be able to do everything you need to do as a head coach?
Bob, ignorance is bliss. You make the time you don't have, or my answers to that. I don't know what I'm getting into. And that's been one of my guiding principles in my career is if I don't know how to do it, I say yes. And I jump in there and I get knocked around a little bit and I learn and then I keep moving forward. So again, you're creating more doubt in me. I'm going to have to call Kathy after this and get some more clarification on what we signed up for. But it always feels good to be at the edge of your ability, and know that you're growing, maybe not in the moment, but at the end. So thanks, Bob. Mark, console me a little bit. Hopefully you're.
Yeah, I think we'll throw it to Mark and we'll get some more, wisdom out of this. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to be involved, I've been on the board of directors for the AVC in the past, quite a few years ago, and I've just had such a great experience in this profession. I think it's been an unbelievable life to be a collegiate coach, and the AVCA had such a big part of that when I was a young coach, when I was in the middle of my career, here toward the end of my career, I just feel like the AVCA is such an important entity, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I grew up in a family. My dad was big into service organizations and being involved in things bigger than yourself. And so I felt like it was kind of my responsibility and my desire to give back and to be involved in more than just as a member or somebody who was taking from the association, but I wanted to be somebody who was giving to. And we talked a lot about that in our program of being producers or consumers. I wanted to be a producer and be involved. So it was interesting, though. The time is a factor because this is our profession and we don't want to do anything that's going to hurt our job and our chance to be successful. That would be unfair to Michigan. That'd be unfair to my student athletes if I couldn't give them my all. But I think a couple of things really sold me on being able to do it and turned out to be true. One is I have an amazing staff. You know, my wife, Lisa, is our associate head coach. She's really, really good. And sometimes when I'm not around, it's probably better. But that certainly helped the process. But Kathy, I got to give Kathy all the credit in the AVCA. And this was, hopefully Keegan will step back from the cliff as I say this. Kathy makes it possible. You know, she does so much work behind the scenes. She does the heavy lifting. You know, we come in and help with some decisions, help with make some signatures, whatever we need to do. But Kathy was so good at putting together the framework of things that took the heavy lifting off of our plate. And I think she does that because, one, she's really, really talented and she's really good. But the other is she knows that that's the only way she's going to get coaches from high-level programs to do that, because they can't sacrifice their program and they can't sacrifice their job. So she makes it really possible to do that. And so Keegan, as long as Kathy's there, I give it a big thumbs up, but that'd be my number one priority, is make sure Kathy's there.
She's a past president too, Mark. So
yeah, she gets it. She knows what it is all about. But I just think, you know, I found both times that I was on the board of directors and I was worried about what the time it was going to be, I felt like I was a better coach because I was more informed about what was going on. I was more dialed into the issues going on. And I just really felt like my program benefited from it more than they suffered from it. So I'm a big fan of people getting involved in the organization. And again, I think Kathy's created a great structure for that to happen.
Well, I'm sure Keegan is happy to hear some of your words of wisdom there, Mark. I think Brian has a couple of things, you know, concerning issues and challenges, you know, moving forward. So I'm going to let him, you know, ask those questions.
Well, both of you, thank you for being on the show. Mark, I was at my doctor's office a few days ago, and a pharmaceutical saleswoman came up and said, "Do you know Mark Rosen?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I want you to know my niece played for him from California this year, and she had a great time. So if you see him, please tell him that, okay?" So I'm telling you. And with Keegan, I'm trying to figure out what the great quote you had. First, I can't even make fun of Ruth's opening statement about why would you possibly do this, because you had a great quote in here, edge of ability. And I always think I went over that edge as a coach before I realized I was over that edge, you know? So I like that quote. But anyway, let's talk about, Mark, let's go with you. And what issues were you unable, or would you like to have gone further with while you were the president?
Yeah, I think that for me, when I came in, I sat down and really tried to reflect on what would I want to accomplish? What would I want to, in the time I have in the organization, what do I see as pressing issues within volleyball, within coaching that maybe I can help affect in some way? And two areas I came up with was, one, the growth of men's volleyball. I think that's so critical in our sport right now. And I think it's critical for our women's side as well as the men's side. And so many of our coaches came from the men's side. My opportunity to play at Northridge really shaped me and helped me become where I am as a coach. And so I would want that next coach to have the opportunity to play on the men's side. So I felt that was really important. And then one that I really felt strongly about was coaching ethics. You know, I felt like we're at this turning point in our sport, whereas coaches get paid more, larger budgets, nicer facilities, all the things that we wish for, more TV, more exposure for our programs. Those are all great things, but with them come unintended consequences. And one of those consequences is the pressure to succeed, or you don't get to keep that job. And so all of a sudden, people start skirting the ethics a little bit, especially around recruiting and training. And so I felt like, hey, I want to try and affect that any way I can. And I see sports like, let's use men's basketball as an example, where we all want to be where they're at in terms of salary and budgets and support. But do we want to be where they're at in terms of ethics and where their sport has gone in terms of coaching ethics? And
Did you know today, all of our Hall of Famer coaches, Brian Gimolero, Bob Bertucci, Mick Haley, will be asking our guests to provide information on her book and an overview of her thoughts on the AVCA virtual convention and why it is critical for coaches at all levels to register today. First, let's head over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce today's special guest. Mick?
Thanks, Ruth, but we're not going to forget that you're a Hall of Famer also. So Ruth Nelson, Hall of Famer, is going to be asking questions also. I'm going to jump right into this with today's guest and welcome back Beth Launiere, head coach at the University of Utah and former AVCA president, which is something a lot of people don't know. They should know. Beth's done more than just turn her program around into a top 10 program, but she's helped lead the Coaches Association, which is very noble, and we all appreciate your efforts there. But I'm going to jump on this new book that you've written, which I find to be extremely enjoyable. I'm going to start with a question, though, about the title. Last week, I'll tell you what the title is, and I have it right here, Stop Competing and Start Winning, The Business of Coaching. And I think it's a book that everybody can get something out of. I've already enjoyed, I'm only about 2/3 of the way through, but I've enjoyed the way you've organized the book and how you can find things in the book when you're looking for special things. But 2 weeks ago, we had Jeff Moore on, who also has a new book out called Strive Together. And in that book, he basically takes a position, we worry too much about winning and we need to start competing. And he talked to us at length about competing and leadership and that sort of thing. So I'm going to just throw this right at you. Your book, Stop Competing and Start Winning, seems to be a contradiction of this other book, but that's only in the title. So how did you come about the title, and what does it really reference here?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for having me. I enjoy being on with all of you. I've known you all for a long time, and I especially appreciate the banter before we go live. That's my favorite part of the show so far. Great question, Mick. I tend to think it's absolutely about winning. We step on the court to compete, and we compete to win. Doesn't mean that we focus 100% on winning. If you did that, I agree with your previous guest that you'd be in trouble. The premise of this book truly is about how do you design your program to be designed to win. The subtitle is The Business of Coaching. The idea was to take business principles and apply them to sport. And my co-author started working with my program about 5 years ago. Very closely with me, a fan of the program. And he's a high-level business consultant. And the idea here, Mick, is that, when I first went into the Pac-12, as you know, Utah moved in there, I think it's 10, 11 years ago. My staff grew, my support staff grew, I hit the road recruiting, and I was spending all my time managing a program, and I wasn't spending my time doing what I love to do, and that's coaching. And so the idea here is that I hope it will help coaches understand to get your program designed in a really efficient way that allows them to get back to coaching and get the touch points back with the athletes and not just with meetings with staff and administrators. So the idea is it is about winning, but everyone on this Zoom knows that you can't focus on it. You focus on the things that help you be designed to win. I think, that the book talks about that, and it includes a lot of stories about my program and kind of how we've gotten to where we are now.
Bob, what do you think of that?
Well, actually, Beth, I have a question that relates directly to that. I enjoyed in the beginning of the book, reading about your match against BYU, the perfect match, and got to think about that a little bit. And really, when you look at it, 25-15, 25-15, 25-15, you look at those 15 points, it has to be a situation where the most mistakes that your team would have made was probably 7 or 8 mistakes. How do you get your team to play, all right, in a game like volleyball where errors are so critical to the outcome of the game? How do you get them to play and only make 7 or 8 errors in the whole game?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that chapter up. It's definitely kind of a hook chapter to get people interested in the book. And it was about our match against BYU last year and also our run in the tournament, including our match against Stanford. It was very important to me in that chapter to talk about very respectfully how wonderful the BYU program is. And so for us to go down there and play a match like that in the second round was very big for us. But we didn't feel like it was a surprise. Like we had been building talent. Some programs have talent all the time. Some programs have to, get those juniors and seniors on the court. And we'd been building talent, but we'd also been, I'd been working a lot on getting my program really functioning efficiently from a management place and the recruiting place. And we had terrific leadership, maybe one of the biggest things about our team last year. And so, well, of course, it wasn't perfect. It was just a match where we just played fairly flawless. And you're right. I mean, statistically, it was unbelievable to me. I've never been involved with anything like that. But the premise is that those kind of matches don't just happen. You really truly need to design your program. It's not just about having one team 1 year. And I've been here for 30 years, and that's always been my belief, is that I was always in this for the long haul. I always wanted a program that I could be proud of, that people would be proud of, that the alumni would be proud of, and we try to do things the right way over time. And you add in some nice talent, you add in some leadership, and you add in really going outside of the world of coaching for me. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book was, how valuable it is to go outside of our profession for expertise. And at some point in your coaching profession, and you all know this, it isn't about just the X's and O's. It's truly about being a learner of other things that you can bring into your program to make it better. And so I brought in a business expert to help me manage my program. And, that's why we think, it helped us, win that match and then, just be strong year after year.
Okay. Well, how about like in chapter 3, you referred to, the cost of the C performer. Talk a little bit about the C performer and touch on a little bit what that chapter had to say.
Yeah, when we do presentations on these topics, one of the number one things people ask us about is how do you deal with C performers? And we talk about C performers as, maybe they're 5 or 10% of your team, and you could talk to them as, players or as staff. They're the outliers, but they can cost your program a lot. And what coaches ask me a lot about is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a staff member that's not doing what I need them to do? How do you deal with a staff member that's maybe not loyal? How do you deal with them if they're not as motivated as you are? And there's all kinds of reasons why people might be a C performer. And you have to ask your question, what is truly the cost of the C performer? There's a lot of examples of, it might keep other people from getting in that position, which is a problem. You might have a star that's just ready to take that staff position, or you need to get in on the scholarship, and that C performer's keeping that from happening. If they're a staff member and you're on a project and they aren't experienced enough, or they don't have confidence, or their interpersonal skills aren't strong enough. And let's use the example of recruiting. If if you have a C performer, let's say on your staff, and you're trying to recruit high levels, and as we all know, it takes a lot of interaction among the staff members to figure out how to get a top recruit to your program. There can be a very large cost to your program in that case. So, then you have to ask yourself, how do you help them? How do you mentor them? Because that is part of being a head coach, is mentoring young assistants or any assistant. And if you do that and you spend time with them and then you still have problems, then you have a personnel problem. You don't have a talent problem. And so you just need to do something about that. And sometimes that means removing them or whatever that is. And it's when you as a coach and you talk to a business person, it's a lot easier for them to say, yeah, you gotta dismiss them. And we know in the world of athletics, we don't just do that. We don't do that with athletes. We really don't do that with staff. We really try to mentor. And that's, one of the main reasons we're in this profession. So it's an interesting concept. I get asked about it all the time. It's a major topic. And truly one of the reasons I'm passionate about this subject is I think that there's so many great coaches that aren't great managers. They are great on court. And I've seen a lot of really good coaches, not succeed or even lose their jobs. And I just, it bothers me that there's so many great coaches, and it truly has become a business in some ways. And you can talk about it at, Division I level, you can talk about Division II, III, you can talk about high school. When you're dealing with people, coaching is a people business, business is a people business. And so I do think there's kind of tools and concepts for any level in this book.
Well, in chapter 4, you talked a little bit about delegation of duties, and you kind of started to touch on that a little bit. Of course, I seem like I don't know if I'm a very good manager, because I'm basically in these positions where I'm doing everything myself. Mm-hmm. But how about just, talking about that, if you have a full staff and delegation?
Yeah, that's actually the thing that got me started with this from the beginning. I went to Leo Hoth, and a fan of ours, and I said, this is your expertise. Talk to me about managing my program. And he goes, oh, that's easy. I go, oh, okay. And he said, you just have to know what the golden rule is. And I said, what's that? He said, the golden rule of delegation is that anything that can be delegated must be delegated. And I said, okay, yeah, that sounds great, and I probably didn't have much staff back then either. And, but I kept going back to him because it was intriguing to me. And I kept going back and I kept going back. And then the depth of that comment is really what led to this book. And what I've learned is whether you have a large staff or whether you have nobody behind you or below you, you have to figure out what is important that you spend your time on. Your value and your time and is a huge commodity. And what is it that only you can do that nobody else can do? And that's the things that you need to spend your time on. So there's a tool called Above the Line, Below the Line. What are the things that merit your attention and time? And if it doesn't fall above that line, then you're not doing it. You're delegating it to someone else. And if you don't have someone to delegate it to, maybe you don't do it because maybe it's not important.
Buzz reaction.
All right, buzz reaction. I got my buzz reaction screen up already.
Oh boy! All right.
I had mine up.
So does Nick.
I snuck
Okay,
in.
so what did you guys think? 42 guests that have been on for these 33 weeks. Unbelievable.
Oh, is that the screen you got up there right now?
Yep.
That looks great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, my take from all of this is the quality of the people we've had has been absolutely wonderful. Finishing by two coaches that I thought were just exemplary in their presentations and the way they represented the sport and themselves. This has been quite enjoyable. I really like authors, coaches who were authors, our other authors we've had on, our doctors, all of the people we've had on have been in the volleyball family in one way or another. And it's been pretty darn impressive. I don't know what you guys think, but this experience has been great for me.
Yeah, we actually had a comment from a super fan, Dave Bose. wishing wishing thanks to everybody for our time and knowledge. So appreciate that, Dave, and glad you have enjoyed it.
All right, Dave. All right, Brian or Mick? Mick's already gone. Brian, you're
Bob,
ready.
go ahead. Bob, you were ready to go.
Well,
I like the way you passed the buck.
I thought both Keegan and Mark did a great job answering the questions I had asked that Ruth had introduced, in our opening statements about, why they value the AVCA and what it's given to them and why they're willing to take time out and putting a whole year of service in is pretty tough. I mean, we know how much we put into just the presentations that we're doing at the convention, and we've all done that a number of times for the AVCA. And I think it's great that they're willing to do that and their thought process behind it. I thought it was good to share that.
I'm not 100% sure about this, but I believe these guys are given a 3-year deal. I think you come in as president-elect and you watch what's going on, then you become president, and then you have to be the leader, and then you stay on as past president to show the way and to follow through. I think this is a 3-year commitment, and honestly, that's going above and beyond, and only the good ones really do that. The people that are really dedicated to the sport and to growing the sport and to making sure other people have a chance to have the same opportunities we've had. I highly recommend people getting involved. But I did like what Mark said, that the value of being involved isn't realized until you go back to coaching and you realize now you have a greater appreciation and a deeper knowledge of what's happening in our sport, and you actually can lead in your conference, not only with your own program, but within your conference as well as across the country, and be a supporter. I thought that realization hit home, because I always felt
that was Mark. He did talk about that, Mick. You're right. He talked about how he actually felt like he was more on top of all the issues and the concerns and things that were happening in the sport while he was president. So he actually felt like he benefited from, making that commitment.
And I felt like when Banikowski and Liskevich wanted to get this going, what I didn't mention was Sharon McAlexander was kind of a volunteer executive director, and she did the same thing for us in that first year. She carried the heavy load. She helped get organized to start the first convention. She did so much, and Andy was able to get, I think it's Sharon McAlexander, if I'm not mistaken, and she really doesn't get a lot of credit for being that first executive director to run the association, but there's been a lot of people after that. But I was looking at that picture, Ruth, that you put up, and Dick Montgomery was the second president. He was coach, I think, in Brian's league at San Jose State. Took his team to the Final Four. The third president, I believe, was Mike Hebert, if I'm not mistaken, followed by Kathy DeBoer and Cecile Renard and the Minnesota coach. She's now with the
Stephanie Schluter.
Yeah, no, not Stephanie. Can you read her name? Yes. Yes.
Chris Bolts, yeah.
Chris Bolts, who's still with the Women's Sports Foundation, I believe. All of those people have been leaders in their own right, and they all gave time and effort. And then there's a lot of people after them, but that's the first 6 presidents right there. And then we changed the name to include all coaches, not just collegiate coaches. So that's why you have a different name. The association is still the same association, but that's kind of the history of that. And it's pretty interesting to have been involved in all of that. So
so now I'm going to date myself. Okay.
Welcome.
We didn't have that coaching association during AIW. And some of you will recognize these names. I know Bob, because you were participating in AIW, Mick in 81, but in the 70s, I was the AIW chairperson for 2 national championships. So when you're talking about that, we didn't have a coaches association, but everybody with AIW starting in the early 70s, you basically knew everybody in every sport. And Donna Lopiano was my commissioner and Carol Kars was my technical expert. So when we were arguing about the weight of the Mizuno and Molten balls and what we should wear, and Mikasa had a ball and it was heavy, and we got to the tournament and everybody was using the wrong ball. So I'm dating back the history because I know the amount of time. I didn't necessarily want to be chairperson, but my athletic director at the time, which during the 70s were the people in the physical education department. They were the what they call SWAs now. And she said, Ruth, you need to do this. And I said, well, I don't really want to do it. It's taking too much time away from my coaching. She says, no, you need to do it. And I can tell you that what you said, Mick, as former president, taking the time away was, you couldn't have paid me for the amount of experience that I got with an opportunity to stay on top of all the topics. Whereas it seemed like now when you were in that position, everyone would do 411. Some people don't know what 411, but that's information. So they end up calling you. And I would encourage every high school coach, every club coach, every college coach to encourage them to take positions to help their sport grow. Because it was easy for me to sit there and be with the national team and learning. But until I took those positions, I didn't have the opportunity to share people. So that's a little history lesson.
So my athletic director was Donna Lopiano. So guess who was the last chairman of the AIW National Championship? And then I was tasked with getting all the materials together so that we sent them all to the archives. So the AIW would have some history and archives, and I got put to the task to do that all while we were trying to win our first national championship.
So you're in the archives?
Well, my hands are in there because I had to put all that stuff together and pass it along. So yes. So that is some history though, and I think probably it's fun to throw in some humor along with getting everybody updated. You know, coaches used to be on the NC2A selections committee. Brian, were you ever on the selections committee?
No, I wouldn't do that.
I was.
Well, I was.
I was.
Soji used to call me and give me a hard time all the time.
Well, he should have.
Hey, we had
I was the only West Coast team after 28 NCAA appearances that never left the West Coast. So I was never a big fan of the committee that was in charge of.
Well, I was trying
movement.
to send you out all the time. I was trying to.
I wish somebody would have. No, that was the Andy. That was the Andy move. Andy went to Kentucky or wherever he went in the old days, but. So I wasn't.
I got sent to Maryland.
Yeah, well, I would have gone with you. I got sent to Hawaii, Stanford, UCLA, USC, you name it. I went. So I wasn't always. But I take my hat off. That's a really difficult, very difficult committee to be on. Well, and I'm glad it got out of the hands of the coaches. It's too hard.
You never got in trouble with the NC2A for getting too many travel miles that way.
No, that's for sure.
Hey, but you know what? And I hate to go back to AIW, but the regional seating committee, you used to listen to a coach say, well, I had so many players that got hurt. And when we got beat for this, and I go, wait, this is not about you wanting to get a higher seed. Because if you were on the committee, everybody politicked the people before the committee meeting. And it was, I mean, what a difference from the 70s to the 80s to now, as far as the APR. You know, you just played the best teams in the country and you utilized that as your reason why you needed to be seated. But
well, I think Mark did a very good job of talking about ethics in our sport and the importance of them. And how he fought for that and was brave enough to actually get on the phone when he heard a discrepancy and had some tough conversations. That's a true sign of integrity, which I believe our sport is filled with people that have that integrity, and we've seen it on our show for 33 weeks. The people on our show are a great cross section of our volleyball community, and it's a very impressive community of people, professional, with great integrity and great concern about the sport. So I think to go to your original question, I was very happy to be part of this, like Mick said and Bob said and you said, Ruth, that this was a great 33 weeks. And I'm actually more excited about January. I think we've gotten a start. We're getting a little bit better at it. And I think that the spring is going to give us an opportunity to really bring on some great people and even make our show better.
You know, actually talk about volleyball.
Yeah. And the topics, I think we were pretty unknowledgeable about what topics we should go with, and the ones we went with seemed to get us a lot of attention. People appreciated the kinds of things that we brought forward. So I think all of your input on the topics has been really important, because it's been different with each person. So having all 5 of us make recommendations for topics and bringing people on has certainly led us to an awful lot of information that we were able to share with everybody else, as well as ourselves. I mean, I really became quite a bit more knowledgeable listening to our guests. So I really had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, I do have, go ahead, Ruth, I'm sorry.
I have to say, I've done more research, more in the last 33 weeks than I did in the last 10 years. But I was going to say, a lot of coaches have said that they would have never taken the time to read about these issues or even thought about a lot of these issues. And they said, what a great opportunity that we looked forward to on Wednesday, because there were things that we really didn't have time, even though we think you have time. They loved the idea of because no one really got a chance to really address these issues, because everybody was so concerned about COVID that they really kind of focused in on their world. But what we did was we opened up the entire world of all the ideas and issues and trends that were happening.
Well, not everyone knows we were in 17 countries on Friday, right?
Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to tell your friends about our weekly news show. A special shout out to the 80 coaches and leaders in our sport for being guests on our show over the past 58 weeks, and to our friends at Todos Somos Volleyball TSV for joining us live for all their viewers. See you next week for Master Coaches Series 4 Re-Mix Flashbacks.